Hey everyone, Robyn Openshaw here. Welcome to Robyn Openshaw Bitcoin. I have just found out that I'm not the only person out there who's really specifically trying to talk to Gen X and Boomer, especially women. Okay, welcome if you're a man. Welcome if you're a millennial or Gen Z. You're totally welcome here too. But I'm talking to the Gen X women who we are professionals. We had to cross the technology bridges, a whole bunch of them, but we weren't digital natives. And so Bitcoin doesn't necessarily come super natural to us. Let me put that a different way. That doesn't come very naturally to us. And I wanted to talk to you about the fact that I recently realized that I have spent 2,000 days in a row learning about Bitcoin. And I want to tell you what that's done for me and what that has to do with you. Because I came to the conclusion, looking at data, that there was a 1 in 200 chance that if you bought Bitcoin, you would actually hold it until it became life-changing money. Now, where I came up with that is looking at the data of the people who bought back in 2011, how many of them are still holding today? If so, they've held through 4 different crashes. Now, this is an interesting time to be talking about this because as I speak to you, we have just finished a month of a lot of volatility that began with, forget what day in October 2025 it was. I want to say October 12th, something like that. We had what people are calling the flash crash, where Bitcoin crashed and wiped out more holders of Bitcoin who were using leverage than any other crash. I don't know exactly why that's true because we've certainly seen Bitcoin crash more in dollars. It didn't really crash that much in dollars, but what 2,000 days of studying Bitcoin has done to me, and I don't just go to the conferences and listen to the cheerleaders. I listen to Peter Schiff. I listen to him every single time I see that he has new content because he's Bitcoin's most famous hater, and he does update his arguments. And he will admit that he really wishes that back when he had the chance to get in to Bitcoin at $1 a coin, he will begrudgingly, very much acting like a kids get off my lawn kind of guy. He will admit that he wishes that he bought Bitcoin. But I listen to other people too. I'll listen to them as long as they say intelligent things. When they start showing their ignorance of Bitcoin, like Tucker Carlson did, when he said that he believes that the US intelligence invented it, I'll stop listening or stop giving that person really any credibility if my own research for 2,000 days in a row now, which is probably at least 3,000 hours, um, tells me this person doesn't actually know what they're talking about, so I'm not going to continue to give this piece of content my time. But what it's done for me is that during this last month where we've seen Bitcoin crash down, climb back up, not all the way to its all-time high of 125,000 plus, but crash back down, come back up somewhat, crash back down, come back up somewhat. What it's done for me is that I just don't care. I don't much care. In fact, I haven't been on an emotional roller coaster about it. Um, the price of Bitcoin has multiple times, in fact, it is today as I speak to you, below what I paid for the last big tranche of Bitcoin that I own. But if I hadn't done that, probably about 3,000 hours of research now and listened to a lot of voices about it, including listening to the people who don't like Bitcoin or think that gold is better than Bitcoin. Okay, I stacked gold for like 20 years. I own a little bit of it now, but I had an amount that I was uncomfortable with. The more I learned about Bitcoin and gold, the more Bitcoin was becoming the very clear winner. I don't want to do a gold versus Bitcoin video today. I think I've done one before. If you want to hear another one, I'll do another one. How I came to sell $1.2 million worth of gold and go all in on Bitcoin, even though I um, already had plenty of Bitcoin. I have been very interested in making my Bitcoin uh, impervious to home break-ins, to somebody putting a gun to my head or to the head of my husband or one of my children. Nobody can break in and steal it. which is how I felt about my gold. That's one of the many things I could say if I went down that rabbit hole. It's hard for me to not go down that rabbit hole because I think it's a big subject. I think it's an important subject. I still like gold. I very much understand why the world loves gold. I understand why the BRICS countries are going all in on gold. The US seems to be going in all in on Bitcoin, by the way. So what I learned from that 2000 days in a row of studying Bitcoin is it just gave me the conviction to get off the roller coaster and not be in a panic that my Bitcoin's going to go to zero. So as we saw that, what people are calling the flash crash, somewhere in the first half of October, I want to say October 12th, 2025, where a lot of people got wrung out, which is healthy. It's like a forest fire clearing out the dead wood. Has to happen. Yes, we want to send the firefighters. Yes, we don't want all the homes in Malibu to burn, all those things. But forest fires in forests are a natural event and it gets rid of the dead wood. Think of wringing out leverage from the Bitcoin system as a good thing for Bitcoin. Wringing out the bad players. Okay, I don't even think they're like bad people necessarily. Like there's people who will borrow money on their credit card or borrow their grandma's money and buy at the all-time high and then borrow the money that they just bought Bitcoin on and buy more Bitcoin. That's getting into the zone of serious risk and they get wrung out. And people get really depressed over things like this, and I feel really bad for them personally, but it's bad for the asset. It's bad for all of us collectively if the market for Bitcoin is built on a lot of froth and a lot of game playing like that. So we want the strong hands in Bitcoin. We want the people who are putting their actual store of value, their actual savings into the asset instead of gaming it and using a lot of leverage. So when the leverage gets wrung out, just make sure that however you're participating, that you can afford to lose it. That's what everybody says about Bitcoin. I totally agree. But what I got from studying it for 3,000 hours, and including listening to the haters, is a lot of conviction that I can ride through a crash. Where I got the fact that only 1 in 200 of you will actually have strong hands and hold through one or more market crashes is from the data. From 2011 to 2024, it was literally 1 in 200 of the people who had owned Bitcoin in 2011 who still had it in 2024. So I'm not one of them because I didn't own in 2011. However, I did live through the crash in 2022 when Bitcoin went from, I think, somewhere around 65,000 down to, I think it would touch 17,000. It might have even been a little over 15,000, and I didn't sell. So I consider that to be a big accomplishment that is related to the 3,000 hours that I've put in and having a conviction that when it crashes down, it's burning out the dead wood and it comes back because it's still the soundest money ever invented. Now, are there risks to owning Bitcoin? Yes. I think there's a 95% plus chance that Bitcoin drives bad money out. Good money always drives bad money out. In every country, when I was teaching my class on Wednesday night, I said this. I said, look at these countries where they have their own currency, but a lot of the vendors will say, we only want the US dollar, not the I've traveled all over the world, and just as a joke with my friends that I travel with or my husband, I call all the other currencies ding dongs. So let's just call all other currencies ding dongs, all other fiat currencies. I'm not trying to be racist and I'm not trying to be insensitive or culturally ignorant, but sometimes I've gone on trips where I'm in a different country every single day. And so I just call the money ding dongs. So there are many, many countries of the world that say, we don't want the ding dongs, we want the dollars, because the dollar is a more stable currency. Now, you are probably an American listening to this, and you are probably aware that the US dollar is facing unprecedented weakness, and we are $38 trillion in debt. And our interest payments on $38 trillion in debt is as much as we spend for national defense, with 10,000 Marines sitting off the coast of Venezuela right now, and our administration saying they want to start a war with half the world. We're still having to spend as much that we get nothing for, just servicing our interest. So what are you and I going to do about it? That is why I started learning about Bitcoin. It was in 2020, in March, when I said, oh my gosh, they're shutting economies down. The ramifications are going to be huge. Couldn't have known in March of 2020 that the US government would print $6 trillion and dump it into everybody's bank account to just keep us quiet, keep us happy, delay the day of reckoning for what that would do to the value of the dollar or how much our dollar could buy, delayed the day of reckoning by a couple of years. Those stimulus checks, that stimulus money was being dumped into bank accounts, mine included as a small business owner, for something like 2 years. And it was being spent and respent and respent. And that creates like this fake support for a while for an economy. The problem is eventually we have to face reality, which is that our dollars buy us less. Now, there's all kinds of stealth stimulus going on right now. Donald Trump just said he wants to send everybody at least $2,000, everybody except the high earners, at least $2,000 as your share of the tariff revenue. Very clever way to spin the tariffs, which have not actually made us obscenely rich, as the narrative goes. But that's a very clever way to frame stimulus. And if he makes that happen, I have people who, I posted this on Facebook, who said, there's no way the Congress would have to approve it. Scott Bessent said that wasn't true. Listen, you were there in March of 2020. You saw how fast the executive branch and the legislative branch worked to bring Americans an unprecedented amount of stimulus. If they want to do it, if things get bad enough, and they are getting bad enough, okay? Parents are moving in with their children. 40-year-olds are moving in with their grandparents. I personally know several people my age, like I went to high school with, who are living with their parents. And sometimes the circumstances are more complex than just the 58-year-old can't afford her own place. Sometimes the circumstances are, aging parents, grieving parents, lots of different reasons, but things are getting really dire out there. And that's why there's a housing surplus now. Remember the housing surplus shortage from 2020 and 2021? Now we have a housing surplus. What's happening to all these homes as people are moving in together and families are consolidating out of literal financial need? So these were the kinds of reasons that brought me to Bitcoin, but I have more conviction by the day as I watch the consolidation of Bitcoin. And even as it drops, it doesn't drop by as much. And there's a buyer for every seller. Okay. Every time there was one of these chop consolidations or one of these flash crashes, we've had 5 now in the last month. There's institutional buyers who step right in and buy the dip. So unfortunately, we aren't as smart or as patient as these institutional buyers who literally invest for a living. But I just want to encourage you to consider that you could be one of the 1 in 200 who holds your Bitcoin. I promise you I will be. I've put the time in now. I've lived through the biggest, I think it was the biggest crash in 2022. I didn't sell my Bitcoin when it crashed down to 17,000. If it stresses you out, may I highly recommend, I've said it before, I'm sure I'll say it again. If it stresses you out, stop looking at the price of Bitcoin. Remind yourself that you bought Bitcoin to hold it or hodl for the long term, and just stop looking at the price of Bitcoin. Are you looking at the price of Bitcoin 4 times a day? Okay, a little bit obsessive. I've done it too. Not criticizing you, but I hope that you'll consider, if you know that you want to be in Bitcoin for the long term, for it to change your life, for the number to slowly go up to the numbers you're always hearing, 250,000, 500,000, a million, 10 million, whatever. If you want to be there for that, selling it is the wrong idea. I probably know 10 or 20 people who've bought Bitcoin and sold it for every one who bought it and held it. So everybody that I've gotten into Bitcoin, they sold it. It went up, they got excited, they sold. This is just the sign of people who don't have that much experience with investing and they don't know that much about Bitcoin. So join my Wednesday night classes down below. I want to give you the advantage of the Cliffs Notes or the shortcut to my 3,000 hours of research on this subject that give me conviction. I can't convey it to you in this little video, but join me on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. You're not going to have your conviction unless you do it the old-fashioned way, which is spending the time, asking the questions, learning the same stuff that I have. I did not start out with conviction that has 2/3 of my net worth in Bitcoin. I would not have done that when I started buying in March of 2020. I bought the amount that matched the conviction I had in March of 2020. But as time has gone along, um, I won't bore you with the details of what I've done to change my financial circumstances and pivot out of investment in other categories and more into Bitcoin. Not saying that you should do that, but it was only through a lot of research and sort of battle testing it. And watching this last bouncing around that Bitcoin has done in the last month, October, November, into November now of 2025, just gives me that much more conviction. Remember, you want it to go to 200,000. You want it to go to 500,000. Me too. That would be good for you if you're a Bitcoin holder, and that would be good for me. It wouldn't be good for America, and it wouldn't be good for the asset itself if it just shot up to 500,000 right now. That would be really, really bad for a whole lot of people, including people who want to get into Bitcoin, and maybe they finally will. They tend to get in when they see it shooting up. That's when people start piling into Bitcoin, is when everybody's talking about it, even CNN, and it's on a rocket ship to the moon. People will get in based on FOMO, based on greed, but FOMO, man, it is a big thing. Got to know your own psychology. That fear of missing out is not small. So right now, people are not piling into Bitcoin, but the banks are steadily, month after month, dollar cost averaging in. Okay. What we teach of dollar cost averaging in, have a certain amount go in that you can afford every single paycheck or every single month. Then you end up having paid the average of whatever Bitcoin was over the time period that you bought it. Banks are doing the institutional equivalent of dollar cost averaging. They're buying month after month. And that's why when there's these dips, and there's always buyers to buy, so it never gets very low, I really, really wish there would be more individuals, more families, more Americans, more citizens of the world buying. The retail buyers is what they call them. I love that institutions are coming into Bitcoin in a lot of ways. But what I care about is that you protect your family from your fiat currency being debased, whether your dollars are being debased, or whether your Canadian dollars are being debased, or whether your French francs or euros are being debased. It's happening to all of us all over the world, and there is a way out. So I hope that you check it out. I'm not saying you should necessarily spend the 3,000 hours I have. I never set out to spend 3,000 hours. It just got more and more interesting the further I went. I never knew that I would completely nerd out about the kinds of things that PhD economists are interested in. But learn from us, show up on Wednesday nights. It's interactive. Some of our students say it's their favorite thing of their week, that they look forward to Wednesday nights every week. It's 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll give you a link down below. You get a third month for free, and as a friend of mine, use the coupon code Robyn, ROBYN, for an extra $50 off, and I'll see you next time.